Well, it's not over yet. Joining us now by phone is Congressman Tom Garrett. We mentioned earlier he's a Republican representing Virginia's 5th District, which includes Charlottesville. Congressman Garrett, thank you for joining us.
Sure, Kojo. I'd certainly rather talk to you on a different subject matter, but
I'm going to ask you about guns in a minute, so stand by.
Were you in Charlottesville last weekend, and what are your thoughts about how events unfolded there? Could more have been done to prepare for the rally on the public safety side?
Yeah, I don't look. Oh, we can talk about cause and effect, but right now I think it's time to talk about effect and about what's at stake. What's at stake is the legacy of Lincoln and King, who died so that we might fulfill the philosophical words of a slave owner, Thomas Jefferson, that all people are created equal, and the very simple premise expanded upon by Dr. King 54 years ago this month, that we should judge people based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. And, you know, what scares me, literally frightens me to my core, is that we lose truth, that becomes a victim, that everyone's a Nazi. Well, I think it's dangerous to call everyone a Nazi now that we know that there actually are real, live Nazis who descended upon an otherwise bucolic community. And number two, that we unite across party lines, across ethnic and racial and religious lines. I don't care where your ancestors came from, what the skin color is, who you sleep with. If you can't accept on its face the fundamental premise that human beings are human beings, all entitled to some respect and dignity, regardless of their beliefs or their national origins, then we are done. And it is frightening. And, you know, we were on air with Kelly Wright at 3 o'clock the day of the event, calling these people out by name and saying, we need to focus right now on what we have in common and not what separates us. And I think that the vast bulk of people on any side of the political spectrum who really understand the fundamental idea that is America know that what happened was an embarrassment. And
one of the names of the people you were calling out is Jason Kessler, and you're taking quite a bit of flack for having met with him and two of his associates in your Capitol Hill office. He was one of the organizers of the rally in Charlottesville under the banner of white nationalism. Why did you take a meeting with him?
Well, I take meetings with lots of people. I was a prosecutor for 9.5 years, okay? The operative question is when I took the meeting and what did I know? I took the meeting in March.
When did you take the meeting and what did you know?
I took the meeting in March. There was not any sort of rally or any sort of exposing of Jason Kessler, to my knowledge, as the bigot that he is, until May, when they had a rally at that same statue. And I immediately wrote an article that's still available at Tom.
Your cell phone seems to be dropping off. We will have to. Tom will fill up the airways with a sea of rhetoric while we await your return.
I think this is important because this is a congressman. He's a former prosecutor. He's a former captain in the Army. He's from Atlanta. He's a moderate conservative. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus, and he's proposed a legislation to essentially gut the gun laws in the city. But he did have a meeting with Jason Kessler back in March. And I was just about to ask him, what was the meeting about? I worked briefly for...
We have him back. He can answer that question.
Hey, Congressman?
Hello.
Okay, welcome back. Welcome to the cell phone world. This is Tom Sherwood.
Right.
This is Tom Sherwood from NBC4, Channel 4 News here in town.
Hey, Tom,
I listened to your 10-minute conversation on Fox News where you were very clear of denouncing Nazis and hate and all of that, so I don't want you to have to do that again at this moment.
I'll do it if I have to.
Well, no, I'm not going to make you. But I'd like a question. I worked briefly for a member of Congress from Georgia, and I know, and everybody knows, that you have people walk into your office and want to see the congressman. They meet with the chief of staff, or the legislative director, or somebody, and say the congressman would love to see you, but you have to make an appointment. What was that meeting about in March with Mr. Kessler? Because they were there for the unity and security for America. Was it set up, or did they just walk in?
If that was the case, it was not something I knew. I'm familiar with Unity and Security for America now as a Kessler started organization. But I can assure you, and again, I think the pertinent question is, what did he know and when did he know it?
No, I mean, did they walk in, or did they have an appointment?
No, they had called my chief of staff, and what we knew was these were troublemakers, interesting people. I've been in the same room as this guy twice in my life, and I've shaken his hand and had my picture taken with him once. The total amount of time I've spent with him, maybe 10 minutes. But one of the things that we talked about that I recall was a bill that I'm a chief original patron of with Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii called the Stop Arming Terrorists Act, And then I think he wanted to talk about immigration policy. My immigration policy has been consistent forever, and that is we should address the needs of this nation based on the needs of this nation without regard to where anybody's from or how they worship, so long as they can bring something to the table, and this nation is a patchwork of people from all around the world who bring something to the table, then if we need them, we ought to let them in.
Now, let's look forward then. As we go forward now with all the things that will be done. You have been outspoken in your denunciation of Nazis, and that they are not. It is a false equivalent to compare them to, say, anyone on the left who are fighting the Nazis. But you are a very strong Freedom Caucus member. What do you think of President Trump's kind of middle of the road kind of conservative remark on Saturday, then on Sunday, then on Tuesday? It was a whirlwind merry-go-round of positions. What's your advice to the president?
Honestly, I wish the president had asked me. Again, if you go back, the Mike Kelly Wright interview was at 3:15 on the Saturday this happened. I wish I could have grabbed the guy by the shirt sleeve and said, "Sir, right now, we need to denounce the effect. We don't need to start dilly-dallying about what the cause was or moral equivalency, because what's at stake here is who we are as a people." And a lot of people, I think, on the right listen to the president and they go, "Oh, I know what he's trying to say." Well, that's not good enough right now. I'm not trying to criticize his heart. I don't know his heart. I know my heart. But the messaging should have been, this isn't who we are. And he should have invited people from across the aisle. He should have had big enough shoulders to invite his critics to stand beside him. What I've been telling everybody is there are three fundamental premises that anyone who really wants to be an American should understand. Number one, all people are created equal. Number two, people should be judged on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. And number three, violence isn't okay. But those are things that make us who we are. If you don't think all people are created equal, I can't even debate with you because you're fundamentally broken. So,
but has the debate over statues now changed? The original issue that sparked last weekend's violence was that debate over the removal of the statue of Robert E. Lee. Back in 2016, while you were serving in the state Senate, you voted for a bill that would have blocked Civil War memorials from being removed. That bill was vetoed by Governor Terry McAuliffe, but is that still your position on Confederate symbols and monuments?
Yeah, look, I believe we should build more statues, not fewer. What I would like to do, and I've said this publicly and I'll say it again, is put up a statue of Barbara Johns, or the first African-American governor in the United States, Doug Wilder, or maybe Julian Bond, who has a connection to Charlottesville, a hero of the civil rights movement, in the same park, and then contextualize the history. I think it's dangerous to remove the statue. I understand that people are hurt by the symbolism that they see by that statue, but I'm a history major. Those who do not understand history, those who do not know history, are condemned to repeat history. We have lost literally hundreds of thousands of nameless lives to support the premise that people should have equal opportunity, that people are equal. Dr. King died. Abraham Lincoln died. Little children died in church bombings to fight for this premise. And right now I fear that there's a group of white nationalist bastards on one side who want to see violence so that they can get their perverted, fantasy of some sort of racial community.
Congressman, I appreciate. Let me apologize. We don't have too much time.
There's another group of people who want to see the violence because they think it helps them at the polls, and that's dangerous.
Right. Would it be moral equivalency though if Julian Bond statue were put up somewhere in Charlottesville? Then you say it's okay to have the statue of Robert E. Lee, who waged war against the United States.
Listen to what I'm saying. You got to contextualize it. You got to say
that's what I'm trying to do.
This is where we were, and this is where we are. Because you can appreciate the sacrifice of the people who brought us forward if you understand how far we've come forward.
On now to the phones. Here is Kathy in Arlington, Virginia, with an issue that Tom Sherwood wanted to raise. Kathy, you are on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yes, we saw in Charlottesville this past weekend Nazis boldly marching with AR-15s as a militia to intimidate dissent. Congressman Garrett, you've been a vigorous proponent of open carry, not only in Virginia, but also in D.C. You've been actively seeking to allow concealed weapons in D.C. and to end D.C.'s ban on military-style weapons. Have you changed your mind on this issue as a result of the abuse we saw on this past weekend in Charlottesville?
Absolutely not. There were protesters who were protesting against the Nazis who were also armed. I'm happy to share the photos with you, Kojo, if you'd like. Those people had a right to defend themselves. And you're 10 times when a gun in Virginia, you're 10 times more likely to be the victim of gun violence in Washington, D.C. You got to understand that the origin of gun laws in America was Jim Crow. It was a racist society that didn't want African Americans post-war to be able to arm themselves. You have a fundamental right given to you not by law but by God to defend yourself against a would-be attacker. So the fact that bad people carry weapons is only more support in my estimation that good people should be allowed to as well.
Congressman, on the gun issue, you do support the essentially nullifying all the local laws and making federal law just be the law of the land in the District of Columbia. But you also support local government. The best government is government closest to the people.
Absolutely.
So the Congress.
So let me tell you why.
Oh, no, I know why. I know. Let me ask my question. We're almost out of time. Then you can tell me why. In 1973 and 74, the Congress passed the Home Rule Act for the District of Columbia that said that the district would rule itself except in those matters that directly affect the nation and the Congress, and that Congress could have the right to overrule anything the district did because the Constitution gives the Congress ultimate legislative authority over the city. But if the city decides it wants to have laws similar to Maryland and New York State, why can it not do that rather than require the Congress, where Congress, you don't allow guns on Capitol Hill? Why would you want to put guns in our communities, but not on Capitol Hill?
Because people, no, you can by all means have them on Capitol Hill. I was in the Virginia General Assembly where people carried big guns in the building every single day, and I felt safer. The people in Washington D.C. have the same right to defend themselves as anyone anywhere else.
We have our. Do we have a right to make our own laws, though?
The court said in Heller that D.C.'s draconian gun laws were burdensome and overly broad,
and now they've been changed.
D.C. Yeah, I know that's progress, but I think the Heller court would affirm my assertion that residents of the district have the same rights as every other American.
Except to vote in Congress. Except to vote in Congress.
I'd like to start a party called the Individualist Party and look out for the ultimate minority, which is the one person, and understand that as long as you're not hurting somebody else, you should be able to pursue happiness as it suits you.
We don't have a full vote in Congress, so those 680,000 people in the District of Columbia who call it home, including me, we don't have a vote in the Senate or the House or a full vote in the House.
But you would concur that an individual has the right to defend themselves.
I'd rather have the right to vote first.
Well, Congressman,
that was a joke.
Congressman Garrett,
I'm curious, Tom, if you would concur that an individual should have the right to defend themselves.
I think you should defend yourself if you're attacked.
Congressman Garrett, Tom.
So if you're attacked by someone with a gun, how would you defend yourself?
I don't know. I don't know what the circumstance is.
Well, we can't pursue that. We got to get to politics, because as Tom Sherwood likes to say, this is the politics hour. Democrats have jumped on your meeting with Kessler, and they're now hoping that your seat may be in play when you come up for re-election next year. This district has been solidly Republican since Tom Perriello held the seat back in 2008. You easily won it last year, as did President Trump in that district. Do you think the landscape has now shifted?
I'm not defined by my job. I don't have to be a man. When I lose the seat, then that's what the will of the people was. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stand up and fight for what I think is right. I'm going to stand up and we might disagree on what's right. I respect the heck out of you guys. We have a fundamental disagreement on the right to defend oneself. That's okay. That's America. But whether I lose the seat or don't lose the seat, watch me, because I'm going to tell it like I see it, and I'm going to do what I think's right, and I will be like I said, at 3:00 on the day of the hateful, bigoted events in Charlottesville, I was out full-throatedly condemning these people. I had to catch myself there by name. And, I took a meeting with the guy. The Charlottesville City Council met with Jason Kessler a dozen times, and I don't question their motives. They were doing their job. Well, as Tom said, people come to Washington and say, I want to sit down, and if I happen to be in the office, I'm going to sit down unless I know that you're some sort of horrible hate monger, which I learned after the fact in this case. So I don't apologize. I shouldn't have done it, but I didn't. I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't have a time machine.
We're all good. Let me ask a question on this. Corey Stewart's running for the Senate against Tim Kaine. He's a Republican. There are some people, Republicans, who are fearful that his very strong campaign and his race for governor is undermining Ed Gillespie, who I know you support. I'm pretty sure you support for governor in the race coming up in November. Where do you think Corey Stewart fits in the effort to get people to vote Republicans in November?
Listen to what I said about. I think Corey Stewart should listen to what I said about how I wish the president had messaged this. I mean, I don't know his heart either, but if the top issue for any Republican right now is a statue and not jobs in the economy and not individual liberty, then they're missing out, right? I'm very frustrated with some of the.
We only have about a minute left.
Some candidates.
We only have about a minute left, Congressman Garrett, but CNN is reporting that Steve Bannon is out as chief White House strategist. Does that make any difference to you at all?
The only time I've ever interacted with Steve Bannon, he was yelling at me. So, I mean, I'm not going to shed a tear.
A number of Republicans have moved away from President Trump after his remarks about Charlottesville and about Confederate monuments. Ed Gillespie has been trying to walk a fine line given his narrow win in the primary. You represent a district that went heavily for President Trump. Do you face a similar challenge in how you represent yourselves?
Well, let me say this. It went heavily for President Trump. It went about 5 or 6 or 7 points more heavily for me. I think the guy...
So you're saying he needs your coattails rather... You're saying he needs your coattails rather than you needing his.
Well, I don't need it. I mean, look, like I said, I'm not defined by my job. I'm going to be... My father raised me to treat everybody like I'd want to be treated and be the best, most honest, straightforward person I can, and to be strong in the face of challenge.
Congressman Tom Garrett, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, sir. Have a great day, and I enjoyed it.
Tom Garrett is a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. He's a Republican representing Virginia's 5th District, which includes Charlottesville. That's it for the show today.